Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
This is Serious Privacy by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Paul Breitbart and Kay Royal.
We all know that the data protection community is full of lawyers, but not every privacy professional needs to be a lawyer, and yet our guest today loves a legal argument. Sjoera Nas became involved with digital rights in the late 1990s and early 2000s while working for the Dutch internet service provider Access for All, and later for civil rights group Bits of Freedom. But Sjoera is probably best known for her work at the Dutch DPIA, where she took the lead within the so-called internet team, leading investigations into anything that was happening online, from cookies and trackers to interactive televisions, search engines, and picking long fights with ICANN on their Whois register, and telcos on data retention. Since 4 years, Sjoera is a consultant for a privacy company still based out of the Netherlands, but doing work with global impact. Together with her team, she writes extensive data protection impact assessments on a range of cloud services like Office 365, Google Workspace, and most recently Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive. Her customer, the Dutch government and education system, which surely helps when it comes to negotiating risk mitigation measures. Let's hear what we can learn today and what negotiating tips we may bring home. My name is Paul Breitbart.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. I don't know when this episode is going to be published, this week or next week, so I'm just going to go ahead and apologize that apparently Paul and I's week in privacy has disappeared into the technology ether. So we may or may not find it again. We don't know. If so, we may push this one back till next week. If not, we'll do our best to get it published this week. So hello, Sjoera, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Please do correct me if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm absolutely brutal at names, but are you ready for the unexpected question?
Oh, go ahead.
This is a good one. What are you a geek about?
Whoa. I read Scandi-noir novels a lot, so Scandinavian dark thrillers, lots of ice and cold-blooded killings.
Okay, I can get behind that one. I think my answer to one of it was reading, so yeah, I like that. Paul?
Well, the obvious answer would be food, I guess, but...
Yeah.
Can you be a geek about food?
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sure you can be.
Sure.
About recipes and creating nice things. I'm sure you can be a geek about that, but apart from that...
I was going to say, I could see where you could be a geek about beer or wine or bourbon or something like that.
Recipes
Nice.
would do the trick. And otherwise, political fiction, that also works.
Political fiction. Isn't most of the politics we see nowadays, don't we wish it was fiction?
Well, at least we wish.
Yeah, right? Okay. And for me, it's going to be no surprise to anyone. I'm a geek about cosplaying and movies and everything. And now that I work for OutSchool, they ask us to identify our favorite class that we would like to take if we were a child. And so the first thing I went looking for was anything with Maleficent. And there isn't anything. There's princess parties, but there's nothing with Maleficent. And everyone there was like, oh, if you don't see it, then you have to make it.
Yeah.
So I might have to find a class to teach on Maleficent.
Well, sounds like a challenge to me.
Yeah.
It does. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, which actually I think is going to be not only privacy enlightening, but very operationalizing because of the DPIAs that Sjoera has done. So I'm excited to hear about those and, steal a few.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sjoera, first of all, maybe what is your process? I think many people, when they think about DPIAs, they think about clicking a few buttons in software and then getting a report that says you have mitigated risk from a red zone to a gray zone or a green zone, and just attaching some policies to it and then be done with it. But if I look at the things you create, it's a whole different process.
Yeah, they're long to start with. I do have to apologize for that. It's asking a lot from people to read so many pages, but what we do is very similar to what we did with the internet team at the Dutch Data Protection Authority. So we do a thorough technical inspection of the data processing, and we're focused on the metadata. So the data such a cloud provider collects about your individual use of the services. We kind of trust the story that they have this lovely green locker box where they put all your content data. The entire legalese is focused on the green locker box. You can safely store all your content data with us. We won't touch it. It's super secure, and it's much safer than when you store it with your local hosting provider, because we're much better in security than they are, right? That's the story. So that's the marketing. So we kind of trust, yeah, sure, Google, Microsoft, AWS, Oracle. I'm sure they're pretty good in protecting the content you put in those services, right? They do have 2,000-3,000 people working on security. I mean, they're good at that. I sort of trust that. So the interesting bit is what kind of camera they turn on whenever you open and close the green locker box, right? That's where I become intrigued. Like the value of noticing whatever I do with their services can help them develop new services, improve their service, maybe buy a few competitors if they notice I take a walk around the green locker box to another nice, lovely blue locker box, right? And maybe they want to buy it. So that's what intrigues me. Like, what do they really do with the metadata? And they generally tend to be silent about the metadata in their contracts, like the default global cloud providers. So the report is about 60 to 70 pages, really boring details about the technical inspection. What do they actually do with the metadata?
Do you provide cliff notes?
Cliff notes. Cliffhangers. No. Yeah, we do. So we do. Because we describe our inspections in detail, and often this goes in phases, and then a typical cliff note would be the first version of a DPIA report where we say, okay, company X refuses to provide access. Okay, that's a problem, right? Because that immediately results in a high data protection risk, because
right.
Not providing access when a data subject files a data subject access request is like the violation of the primary directive. Thou shalt provide access, right? Transparency is the key. So that immediately results in a high risk. That's a cliff note in that sense that it's the starting point for intense negotiations with the cloud provider, explaining to them why this is a high risk and why it's bothersome if we publish that cliff note in English for a global audience.
Because that is always the intention, that the final report is a public report in English that everybody can read.
That's my personal intention, indeed. So I'm super happy with the reports I'm commissioned to write by the Dutch Ministry of Justice, because they allow me to write those reports in English and publish them for a global audience. So I'm always looking for organizations that dare to take those steps, and it's easier when it's an umbrella DPIA. So what we do for the Dutch government, because it's not just me, like Paul said, I'm part of a team. I'm not the technical expert, so I work with a colleague, Floor Terra, who does all the technical analysis of intercepting all the outgoing traffic and looking up in the dark caverns of telemetry crofts, whatever the meaning is hidden of those metadata, right? And so I couldn't do that by myself. But so we're always looking together for organizations that are willing to let us conduct these umbrella DPIAs, so they don't contain specific company confidential details from any specific university, for example, or any specific Dutch government organization. But we get the freedom to sort of describe all possible nightmare scenarios and how to mitigate those. So that is more comfortable for everybody. And then all the individual Dutch government organizations and universities, they can use this umbrella DPIA as a starting point. Like 90% of the work is done, and they just have to fill in what nightmare scenarios apply in their specific case, right?
And just by the looks of it, of course, when we record, we can see you. The people listening to this will not be able to, but you shine very brightly when you talk about this. So you must thoroughly enjoy.
I do.
Picking out all these nightmare scenarios and tearing all these companies apart before building them back up again.
Exactly, because that's the good part. Like when I worked for the Dutch Data Protection Authority, I could only tear the companies apart and stop at the point where I would have to conclude, okay, you're violating the law because of A, B, or C, whatever. But now I get to build up again as a consultant. So I can also start talking to these companies, explain to them why there's a problem, but more importantly, explain to them what they can do. And it's often not that difficult. I mean, sometimes it is, but sometimes it is an easy measure they can take to mitigate a high risk. So that is the good part. So in the beginning, it's sometimes a bit painful, these negotiations, when we both start from our trenches and just keep shooting. I keep on shooting my GDPR truth and they keep on saying no.
I can't imagine how hard that must actually be to get the companies to give you the information you need, because most of the time we can't even get it from, the people that we're working with in a company that are supposed to know what the systems do, much less go directly to the vendor and get them to disclose all of their hidden secrets.
Yeah, that takes time. And in the end, I think there's a couple of pointers to repeat my recipe, right? So a couple of ingredients that I think make this a successful approach. And first of all, Floor and I have a lot of experience. We've conducted DPIAs on about 7 or 8 of the big global cloud providers. Not all of them public yet, because sometimes it takes a lot of versions of the DPIA before everybody's happy.
Now, when you say before everybody's happy, and don't let me distract you from the key ingredients from the best recipe ever, but does that mean that you give it to the company that you're evaluating to see if they agree or disagree?
Yeah, but a DPIA consists roughly of 2 parts. One is facts and the other is assessment, right? They don't get to comment on the assessment. I mean, that is my part.
Only on the facts.
They get to comment on the facts. They get to read the assessment, right? And then they become aware that some of the facts inevitably lead to a bad assessment, a high-risk assessment, and then they can change the facts to change the assessment, right? That's the process we're in. But so what I mean is once we finalize version 1 or 2 of a DPIA and we're still at a high number of high risks, right? Then we enter negotiations with the cloud provider and try to convince them, look, if you take step A, B, and C, you can mitigate those risks. And we understand if we ask for a fundamental redesign of your services, that it cannot be done overnight. We understand you have a week now. We say, okay, 3 months would be nice.
Generous. I like that.
It's understandable. So then that is the process of negotiating. That works well. Sometimes it takes a year before the DPIA can become public. Sometimes we have to decide, okay, the negotiations do not result in a significant lowering of high risks. We're going to publish anyway. We've done that with Microsoft a couple of times, that we published high risks. But because we have so much experience, we tell these other cloud providers, look, this is not a good idea to let us publish such a DPIA in English with 9 high risks. You really don't want that kind of publicity, because it's not just the Netherlands we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about the EU, right? We have one GDPR. So, and we're not unreasonable, we're willing to talk. Just show us what you got. Maybe it's actually less frightening than you think it is. And sometimes in these negotiations, we find out that the legal people never saw just what you said.
That's not surprising.
And then we look together and we say, okay, we can deal with that. We can find a solution. So back to the recipe, right? So
yes.
The first recipe is I do these umbrella DPIAs on behalf of the central Dutch government and usually on behalf of all the Dutch universities. And in the beginning, when we talked to Microsoft, Microsoft said, so yeah, you're the Netherlands, right? You're this big, basically 1 centimeter from my global world perspective. We're an ocean steamer. You cannot expect us to change our course because the Netherlands, this tiny, weeny country, nothing wants us to change our global course. We're not going to change anything. You know, if you don't like it, just stop using Microsoft, right? So that was the starting point of conversations.
Okay.
Well, then we'll stop.
We fully understand you're a brilliant ocean steamer, right? And you're steaming so nicely. We just do need you to change course. And then, you know, at the end result of publishing negative DPIAs and negotiating and getting to know each other better is that they do change course globally. So the ocean steamer really did change online service terms and the data protection addendum for the entire world, for all enterprise and education users.
The North Star looks really small, too.
The moon does, too. But it's true. I mean, this is of course, these are big results. Would you say that those results are only usable in the public sector for governments or in the education sector, or are they also beneficial to any company out there?
Any company, because if they change their enterprise license conditions, it applies to any company.
Right.
And I think government also has a moral responsibility to take the lead here, because companies are actually prohibited from jointly negotiating because of antitrust issues, right? So government can do that and take the lead in negotiating better conditions. And so that's the other thing. So one is our experience with all of these cloud providers. So we can often point them to, hey, your competitor is doing ABC. Why don't you do ABC? And then they look at us, oh, well, you know, maybe that's even a realistic mitigating measure. We can maybe study that. So that works and in English. And the fact that those DPIAs are transparent, that's crucial. It's the same I always said when I worked for the Dutch Data Protection Authority. I said, you don't write those privacy policies for any average user or customer. You write them for me, right? I'm your audience. The supervisory authority is your audience. The same is with those DPIAs. My audience is not every government employee or university student that wants to read about high data protection risks. My audience is a few selected journalists.
Nice.
And some really dedicated data protection officials, DPOs, right? Officers. They change the world. So if 10 of those people read my horribly long reports, they can change the world.
But there is always a press release available, right? Or a blog available.
Yeah, there is.
Where you very nicely summarize in, 2, 3, 4 pages maybe?
Yeah.
What has been done, what has been achieved, so that every privacy professional should be able to read and have sufficient focus to get through that, even with all the tons of other documents that we all have to read.
Well, can you reduce it to a little comic strip for me, please?
Video, a blog.
I'm not getting the feeling that's going to go over well.
No.
No, but in truth, I mean, especially if you, for example, the latest one that you released, I think it was mid-February, was Microsoft SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. If your organization is using those products, I think it's mandatory to at least read the summary of the DPIA and see what lessons learned are in there for your own contracts. Same for companies using Google Workspace or Office 365.
Yeah, but so generally organizations worldwide can now rely on improved terms and conditions and improved data processing addendum. And most of the measures that we now recommend are really for the administrators of those organizations to do the last bit of cleaning up that Microsoft is refusing to do, like changing privacy unfriendly default settings and do some opt-out. Those are the minute details of actually using those services, because these are 3 cloud services. And so a lot of responsibility is now on the administrators. And that's why I count on the DPOs to help their administrators create the right settings. And what we always do in those DPIAs and in the blogs I write about it is create a nice table with to-dos for the administrators. If they follow those to-do lists, they shouldn't see any particularly high risks anymore for data subjects. With some exceptions, of course. It's an American cloud service. There's a political debate about the possibility of using US American services at all.
True.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you
Go
also
ahead.
look at transfer risk, or is that
I do.
deliberately excluded?
No. I created a separate Excel hell is my favorite word for it. It's 113 rows and 7 tabs assessing the transfer risks for those 3 US American cloud services. Following a model from a Swiss lawyer, David Rosenthal from Fisch Lawyers in Switzerland. I really appreciate that, and I want to take my hat off to him, because he published a public Creative Commons Excel sheet where he did a kind of a mathematical calculation of the risk that your data are being accessed unduly, right, without proper legitimization under the GDPR by US law enforcement and security services.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to look that one up and
Yeah.
see if I can use it and start bothering some people with
Yeah,
it.
they're public. Since we published, SLM Rijk, the government supplier manager for Microsoft, published Excel, unfortunately, in the format of 7 PDFs. If it was up to me, I would have published Excel for everybody to read, because Creative Commons should, we need to pass that knowledge on. And I would love to see other people improve, because we're experimenting here with a risk-based approach, which is sort of possible according to the EDPB and maybe not possible if you look at the guidance from the French Data Protection Authority. So we're sort of on the ledger here and looking down and hoping we won't fall.
So where are you in this debate? Do you favor a risk-based approach, or do you say it's impossible?
Well, in this recent DPIA, I just put out the facts. Like, Microsoft has made this written statement, public statement, that they have never, ever disclosed any personal data from any public sector customer in the EU. Never, ever disclosed. And they make a very strong point that they say, okay, we're prohibited from telling you how many orders we received with the gagging order, national security letters, FISA 702 orders, US Cloud Act orders. We're prohibited from saying how many we received, but we never disclosed, which is not prohibited for them to tell. So that is a wonderful statement from Microsoft. If you take that as a starting point, and I have to believe Microsoft there.
Of course, yeah.
Right. You can't go public with a grandiose statement like that that's not true.
Exactly. I get a lot of...
Well, I guess you could, but you'd get in trouble pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. And Microsoft is not the only one. Google also went public with a statement, in 15 years, nobody ever asked me for any Google Analytics data. No IP addresses, no nothing. AWS, Zoom, IBM all said we never received national security orders.
Right.
It's just in their public statements. Never disclosed, sorry. I should use the right term.
Yeah.
But so if you take that as a starting point, you might, and the other thing is, the other fact for me is that what Snowden described in 2013 was interception in the clear of traffic exchanged between the data centers on US American soil of the big tech providers.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2013, right?
Yeah.
Since Snowden released...
That was a different age.
Yes, now they've all applied strong transit encryption to all data traffic in transit from the EU to the US and within the US and across the rest of the world, right? So I think that scenario where FISA 702, Section 702 and EOP 12333 are being used to intercept data in mass surveillance in the clear from these cables is no longer true. There surely will be targeted surveillance, right? I have no doubt about it. If the NSA wants your data, they're going to get it. But that's targeted. That's completely different from mass keyword interception. And I do believe these big tech providers that they never had a front door open to the NSA. Please come and collect all of our data and take whatever you like and do a keyword search. I do believe that is not true.
Well, they don't want NSA in their data either.
Exactly. If you look at those facts, then you will understand my impolite view of the risk assessment by the EDPB, that it's a bit anal retentive, right?
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Paul and I definitely fall on the side of risk-based assessments.
Yeah.
And it's been really difficult to watch and listen to all the, as you just mentioned, Google Analytics and the findings there when we're like, but who wants that data?
Yeah, and even if you look back at the origins of the GDPR, the whole intention was to create a risk-based approach in the framework of the GDPR, not just for international transfers, but for all of data processing, and to facilitate the free flow of data processing also outside of the European Union. I've said all of this before in many episodes, so I won't repeat my rant, but
that is critical, Paul. The GDPR was created for the free flow of data.
And to protect the data in accordance with our European standards.
And to protect the data.
I would put the emphasis on protection.
Yeah, well, absolutely guarantee protections. But, I mean, it was for that purpose, the free flow of data with basic protections, with fundamental protections for the data. So the risk to the individuals isn't great. They're not harmed.
If you end up in targeted surveillance from the NSA, then you end up basically in a legal Guantanamo Bay, right? There's no escape. And you have no rights. You're an alien. You won't be told, and you will be put in the darkest of dark holes, right? I wish that to nobody, and I consider that an extremely high risk. If you're put on a no-fly list, or if you're being arrested at the border without knowing why. I mean, those are scary, life-threatening circumstances in a way.
They are.
So the risk must... I am with the supervisory authorities that we need to find an agreement with the USA to mitigate those risks in some way. Give European citizens legal rights, legal standing, right, under US law. So that... And that requires a tough game. I play that game all the time. So I completely sympathize with the supervisory authorities that they play hardball now and say, okay, no transfers at all, right? Until you fix it, fine. But if they base it on the risk identified in the Schrems 2 court case, that of FISA Section 702 and EOP 12333, then I think it's a bit outdated. I don't think that is the risk. There is a huge high risk if you can't defend yourself, if you end up in those targeted queries from particularly the security services, but not because of systematic surveillance. Sorry.
It's not just a US risk, it's a European risk, it's a Chinese risk, a Russian risk, although, well, Russia is a bit isolated at the moment, luckily, but...
Anonymous is taking care of that for us.
Well, and some sanctions, and I think there are some people there who would end up on those NSA no-fly lists, and rightfully so. But it is a challenge for basically every single country that has security services, and that is a bigger debate that we need to have. But it is
exactly.
It is not just the US.
No.
Right.
Though I must say, Paul, you must be on the same page with me. In the Netherlands, we do actually put ex-post and ex-ante checks on our security services. I think we're one of the very few countries where citizens actually rejected new powers for security services.
It's true. Although even those powers could be reinforced and could be more effective than they currently are. But we are doing already quite a lot more than some other countries.
Yeah. But so in the end, when I do believe in a risk-based approach, but not, you can't, I agree with the EDPB that you can't base the risk-based approach on statistics, right? If it has never occurred, it still may occur tomorrow and the risks will be terrible. So we need an agreement, a transatlantic political solution to this problem. I can't fix it with the DPIA, so the only thing I came up with is, okay, you'll have to use end-to-end encryption, right? Because you have to be in control of the key. Pseudonymization is nice to have, and Microsoft and Google and all the other cloud providers do a great job in transferring those diagnostic data, the metadata, in pseudonymous format with a few mistakes now and then that make
Nobody's
my
perfect.
DPIAs nice to read, because sometimes some content is slipped in. But so we're looking at a problem that is hard to solve, because double key encryption, what Microsoft offers for end-to-end encryption, isn't available for all types of file formats. And it's not workable if you need to access real-time database data. So we're struggling with that, and that leaves me with the only conclusion I can now draw based on the EDPB guidance, that there is a high risk for when you process special categories of data, like medical data or data about your religious or sexual orientation. You have to apply your own key, which is not feasible currently, technically, for all types of communications that you want to use the cloud providers for this. So there's this thing that organizations must look into. How do we treat those special categories of data? Do we need to create maybe on-premise servers, local servers with a local hosting provider for those categories of personal data? Because that takes into account that if those data would be requested or ordered, if access would be ordered by the security services, then the risks are unfathomable.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking about feasibility,
Yeah.
the way you draft the DPIAs and the time spent, how realistic is it for just the average DPO to take a similar approach?
Not. That's why I think... No, not at all. No.
No, we can benefit from her work.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of publishing.
So can I send you a list of companies I need reviewed?
Yeah, well, it could help. But it's not... It's actually quite amazing that only the Dutch Ministry of Justice takes this so seriously. And this strategic supplier manager for Microsoft, AWS, and Google is one of the offices. There's other central supplier management offices within the Dutch government, housed in different ministries, that also take this very seriously now and commission us to write DPIAs. But it's really strange that the Dutch government is the only one taking this responsibility. And I've sort of convinced SURF, which is the ICT procurement organization for all the Dutch universities, to join me, and CIVON, an ICT procurement organization for all the schools in the Netherlands. Join me. Come on, join us. While I'm doing this DPIAs, join us and provide me with your worst nightmares. What could happen to children? What could happen to students? What could happen to, for example, nuclear researchers at universities? They have a different scale of risks.
So what's next? Invite the hospitals to also join?
That's strange that they do not have that type of central procurement organization. I think that, that would be...
The medical must be weird all around the old and outdated and...
Yeah. But why only the Netherlands? Where are all the other 25 by now other EU countries? You know, they all have central procurement offices. And we tried to unite them in a kind of an initiative together with the EDPS, the Supervisory Authority on the European Institute. We tried to unite them in a thing called Cloud Council, and we thought, okay, now we're gonna rule the EU, right? With one DPIA for all.
Back to the old days, being in the Working Party 29 and drafting all those
Exactly.
opinions.
We tried, but it doesn't seem to work. I think culturally, this is not... Yeah, the other supplier managers seem more focused on price negotiations than on privacy negotiations.
That's always the challenge. And maybe you are not able to comment on this, but are you in any way involved in the coordinated investigation that the European DPAs are running on government
I've seen
cloud
the questionnaire
services?
though. Yeah, so I'll help my government colleagues to answer those questions.
Because this is a good initiative, which hopefully may also lead to a further improvement, at least of awareness in government procurement offices, and hopefully also in end
Definitely.
results.
I'm super happy with it. Even though I'm a bit scared of the head of the task force, who is a great friend, by the way, the former French sanctioning boss of the CNIL, because the French take a really radical perspective on cloud providing, namely there cannot be any cloud providers only if they're French, right?
OVH is okay, but that's about the only one that is acceptable.
No, but the CNIL really forced both Google and Microsoft to open a French shop to basically provide their infrastructure to a new French company in which nor Google nor Microsoft have any shares. So it's a kind of, they just had to license their technology without any say. And if that is the outcome of the EDPB public sector cloud task force, then we'll have 26 national clouds. And I don't
We'll be
think...
back where we were.
Yeah, exactly. That won't bring the security benefits we hope for, nor the scale advantages.
No, nor the backup capabilities that may also be required.
Yeah.
Right.
And especially in a 24/7 economy that...
Yeah.
And disaster recovery and burst processing and everything else. Yeah.
It's interesting, yeah. So which of the 7 or 8 that you've done so far, which is the one you're most proud of?
The one we're going to publish next week.
Which is?
I can't say. Sorry. But super proud.
Just tell me if it's not Google Analytics.
No, it's not.
The world needs more on Google Analytics. Companies don't know what the heck to do.
I'm writing a blog about it, which should be published the day after tomorrow, about alternatives for Google Analytics. I'm actually promoting a project from the Radboud University in the Netherlands, in Nijmegen. There's a project called NOGA, No Google Analytics, and they've done an inventory of all the available open source alternatives for Google Analytics. And I combined that with the input from the CNIL, the French Supervisory Authority. They published a list in September of 15 privacy-friendly, GDPR-compliant alternatives for Google Analytics. And so then companies have something to choose from while they're preparing for a Google detox. A privacy company, we're using Matomo Cloud. It's based in New Zealand, and it's really suitable for very popular websites. You can use it up to millions of daily visits. It works well. And the Radboud University has done a lot of comparisons in pilots where they simultaneously ran Google Analytics and Matomo and compared the output. Even though the Radboud they took the approach of a locally hosted on-premise server. Mm-hmm. I think most companies prefer cloud service.
I think so, yes.
We do too. At Privacy Company, we use the cloud service. But it works well, and the dashboard is it looks good. And so I think a lot of companies should sort of overcome their default bias and their endowment effects and start talking to their marketeers and say, okay, look at these results at the Radboud University. It's all public. It's all at nogadata.nl. It's all in English. nogadata.nl. I'm advertising once more because I'm really fond of their work.
We'll link in the show notes.
Yeah. I agree, because even reaching out internally to internal parties to say, what does our marketing team need? Are you using Google Analytics? Why?
Yeah. What they did is ask these marketeers, so what are you afraid of? And then the marketeer said, we know. And they drew up 36 scenarios. 36 scenarios. And they were convinced Matomo could not meet their wishes. And so they did. 30 were possible without any further ado. For 4, it required a bit of tweaking. And 2 scenarios were impossible, one of which was targeted advertising on Google Ads. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's not the purpose of analytics.
No.
Right, exactly.
I do think that the one main concern that I have heard is also what to do with historical data. How are you going to compare going forward what you had and what you get?
Yeah. But that is why companies should start now with the same sort of experiment that Radboud was doing to compare the simultaneous input from Google Analytics and Matomo, because there are differences, but they are systematic. So then you can discount for the differences comparing your past data to your future data.
So basically you're saying let them run next to each other for 6 months or a year and then switch out the other one.
If we're given 6 months or a year, I'm not sure.
Yeah. That sounds very good. Kay, any final questions before we wrap up?
I can't think of anything. No, this has been wonderful, and I know that our listeners will absolutely appreciate the information.
They will get homework because they have a lot to read, lots of blogs, and if they want to dive deeper, there are hundreds of pages of DPIA, which I truly recommend at least skimming through, because there are lots of lessons learned that you can benefit from in your own negotiations with cloud services. And how often
we can start a DPIA support group. DPIA is anonymous.
Yeah. Oftentimes you hear people saying, but we are so small, we don't have the negotiating power against a Google or a Microsoft or other cloud services. And now you can just say, but listen, you've already done it for the Dutch government, so why wouldn't you do it for me? It is technically possible. You have the capabilities. So just give me what you gave to the Dutch government.
Exactly.
Easy as that.
Couldn't have said it better, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sjoera. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us again for another episode of Serious Privacy. If you like our series, please do tell your friends and colleagues about us and rate and review our episodes in your favorite podcast app or on your favorite platform. Should you have any questions or suggestions, please reach out to us via seriousprivacy@trustarc.com or via info@seriousprivacy.eu, via Twitter @podcastprivacy, and you'll find us on LinkedIn. Also there, we are Serious Privacy. You will find Kay on Twitter as Heart of Privacy and myself as EuroPaulB. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace, so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.